Hello, my name is Matthew Eckelberg, and this is my video presentation for assignment 4.3 Data Patterns. The purpose of this assignment is to use advanced data mining techniques to select relevant features, demonstrate statistical concepts and software tools used to identify patterns, determine correlating factors and differentiate between spatial, temporal, and coincidental associations, value data monetarily and determine if the value outweighs the cost, apply data mining techniques such as clustering, visualization, and association, use current technologies to identify patterns in images, audio, and text, and make effective decisions based on observed patterns. And of course, to create forecasts based on trend analysis. A quick overview on what we're going to talk about today. First, an introduction. Then, what is the value of our data? Data patterns, relevant features and variables, data clustering, data association, correlations, can network analysis be used, optimization and risk reduction, trend analysis, international expansion, and where would I go due to those three determining factors, and of course a summary. So today is a little bit of a hefty presentation, but I will try to get through this as quickly as possible. A quick introduction. Again, the working company that we are going to be analyzing today is Tencent Holdings, a Chinese company offering worldwide services and number 74 on Forbes Global 2000 list. They are an investment holdings company in the internet and mobile value-added services, online advertising, and e-commerce transactions. They are also the largest video game company in the world and have various investments across multiple industries: video games, social media, tech, automobiles, and so on. What is the value of the data? On the left side, we have Tencent Holdings. This is an image from Yahoo Finance depicting some real data about Tencent's financial information. So when we're trying to determine data value, we should look at six factors. So the first being, what is the total financial worth of the company, the value of the business, the value of the customer data, determine the company value without that data, what is the cost associated with replacing this company data, what does the hourly cost of that data recovery process look like, and of course lost operations, such as employees can't perform their regular duties because of a data loss. What does that cost look like, or employees that are now idle or temporarily laid off. So looking at the enterprise value, Tencent is a massive operation with a value of 520.39 billion. So looking at some of these other factors, obviously we know Tencent Holdings is a ginormous enterprise they are highly valued, so they value their customer data very much. A lot of their products are customer driven, and they're handing out offerings such as social media and WeChat. WeChat alone has 100 million daily active users. So yes, the value of the customer data is very high. What is their value without that customer data? Probably not nearly as substantial, because they would kind of be marketing in the dark and not offering exactly what it is in tune to the public's desires. As far as what it would look like to replace that data, very, very timely, very costly. When you look at the amount of employees that Tencent currently has, as of 2019, they had just under 63,000 employees. And we know that 800 of those employees are actually dedicated to a data platform division team. That came about when China acquired Alibaba, which is essentially China's version of Amazon. So we know that there's employees. We know that those employees would be working overtime to essentially recover that data. So the best strategy here in Tencent's realistic game plan is to just have a phenomenal backup and data recovery, disaster recovery plan in place, as well as a business continuity plan, to hopefully prepare for the worst, because I'm not so sure it would be an easy task to recover years and decades really of customer data and information and demographics, etc., etc. And that is all strictly on a business side of the house, almost monetary argument. Whereas depending on the data loss, there are potential very large backlashes that aren't really covered in these 6 factors here, but just the bad PR itself could have even more dire consequences. We don't have to look any further than Facebook with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which obviously, yes, it was bad PR, but there were some very, very costly penalties and reprimands associated with that scandal. All right, moving on to data patterns, relevant features, and variables. The data that we're going to continue to look at is the financial data that we have pulled. So as we can see here on the left, this is a summary of the past 5 years for Tencent Holdings. And as we can see, there's a climb all the way to about April 2018, and things were looking very good. And then sort of a plummet, if you will, until we can see a little bit of a rebound, and leading into 2019, and a little bit of a rocky but stable ride from there, and finally some growth again is what we're seeing. But as I mentioned, it's financial data. So yes, 2018 was a rough year, and that's what I want to kind of shine a little more light on. So in November 2018, their shares hit the lowest that they were in 15 months. They shed 1.7 trillion Hong Kong dollars, and then that's 220 billion in USD. However, they bounced back before the year's end with a 47% increase on advertising, and they were able to post revenue up 30%. They actually had an increase of 32% on the year. So that's not, it's nothing to complain about. But the year prior, 2017, their sales were up 54%. And a lot of this has to do with the clamps that Chinese regulations were throwing down on the video game industry, which forced Tencent to aggressively monetize its social network and other investments such as cloud computing, and really reinvest into itself to get out of the hole and the downward spiral that they were currently in. Taking a look at correlations and whether they are spatial, temporal, or coincidental, it has been determined that a spatial correlation can be drawn. In 2018, as we previously mentioned, China started regulating video games and new releases by requiring a video game company to attain a license and a publishing number. And it is a government approval process, so the process is quite slow and backed up. What that did to Tencent is, the fact that for the past years up to 2018, the main revenue driver for Tencent was video games. So the gaming business and their revenue suffered. And, as we mentioned, that's what caused them to invest in themselves, ramp up advertising efforts, and really sell their cloud computing platform to widen its focus into the IoT devices and so forth. All right, taking a look at if network analysis can be used on our current data set. So because we are looking at financial data primarily in this assignment, I'm going to say no. However, user data, absolutely. And we know Tencent has a plethora of user data. So if we look on the left side here, this is actually a big data hairball. So social data is not like most big data. The picture below is a hairball network. It's not that useful. It shows us absolutely everything, and by showing us everything, we get no insights and see nothing, really. So what we want is interesting and useful, not big. Now, with Tencent having being the owner of WeChat, and WeChat has 1 billion active monthly users, League of Legends with 115 million active users a month, and Fortnite with 250 million registered users. They have plenty of user data with social data insights to be had. And that's strictly on the user side. There's also some business social data to be had there when you start looking into the cloud computing customers and some of the data sets of the other key investments that Tencent has made. So can network analysis be used? Refer to the first two bullet points. Financial data, no. So we're not going to dive too much deeper on this in this assignment. But can they, apply it in other areas of their enterprise? Absolutely. All right, moving on to optimization and risk reduction, and what are the emerging trends that we should look for? So I've mentioned it a few times already, but probably the biggest emerging trend right now that Tencent should continue to pursue is the cloud computing industry. So they entered the cloud computing industry in late 2018 in a not quite desperate, but an urgent restructuring effort due to the decline that we just saw in shares and revenue. So with them coming to the game so late, they've actually done very well. So they, as of 2019, they serve over 1 million paid customers, and they generated 2.4 billion just from their business cloud solutions. Now Alibaba, their competitor, still has the leg up, generating $5.1 billion in cloud computing in 2019. However, the sheer rapid rate that Tencent is growing should have Alibaba slightly concerned that their competitor is catching up to them. Another thing to look out for is, and this is more of a analyst gut prediction. But they are owners of Riot Games, and Riot Games does have a highly anticipated video game. It's currently in beta testing, set to release this summer. It's titled Valorant, and it's highly anticipated amongst the gaming community. It's picking up a lot of viewership on Twitch and Mixer, the famous video game streaming platforms. So it would be interesting to see if there's a correlation in any stock market share takeoff, or if yet another Tencent product could attain the level, somewhat even a fraction of the hype that Fortnite was able to achieve. Time will tell, but that's more of a analyst insider prediction. Continue to self-invest. If we get away from the emerging trends now and kind of look more at the optimization and risk reduction, definitely what saved them last time in 2018, it was self-investing and it was advertising. So to abandon those efforts would be foolish. I don't foresee that happening just because they are making so much money from the cloud business aspect. Continue that self-investment and continue to grow those departments as ferociously as they're growing their video game efforts. And then I think to help salvage those video game efforts is just having that continuous software development lifecycle, or SDLC. Tencent has already mentioned they have, I think it was in 2019 November, they were mentioning how they had about 9 products in the pipeline that they were waiting on approval. So they're more than likely already doing this, but just keeping that continuous pipeline ready, so that whenever China government officials authorize a game or give them their publisher label, they can just get it out there, and eventually it'll be a continuous stream, whereas it won't be that stagnant hit that they took in mid 2018. So, trend analysis. What is the future of this data? Well, as we can see, it's quite a healthy outlook. Their financials are looking very healthy. Their investments are very, very diverse. A great portfolio. What is the future? Big data. We already mentioned the hairball. We already mentioned the financials. The big data is just not going to stop, especially now they're in cloud computing and they're getting to the IoT. That's Internet of Things. The big data is just going to grow exponentially. They did just sign a contract with the MLB, so they will be officially partnered and officially televising and streaming their games, very similar to how they, I believe they have the NFL and soccer as well. So in short, what is the future of this data? If we're talking about the data exactly and the big data, it's going to grow. It's kind of the that's kind of the safe cop-out answer for almost every industry and every company right now, but growth. Growth 101. And finally, international expansion. When taking into account politics, climate, and terrorism, where is a prime location for expansion? If you couldn't guess by the flag on your screen right now, it's India. So, what's the reason for this? India is surging. There's expected to be 650 million internet users in India in 2020. That country is still rapidly growing and catching up with the times, for lack of better terms. Right now, what we're witnessing is Tencent versus Alibaba. Both of these, they are the top two China companies, right? And they are investing in Indian firms, and many of these firms have been crossing the 1 billion mark already with the funding of these Chinese investment companies. If we take a look at the Chinese investments in Indian tech companies, 2014 it really started to spike, and since then it's just it's continued down this path, this trend. Taking a look at the climate, I mean, it's nothing outrageous. In the winter it can drop at around 50 Fahrenheit, and in the summer up to 104. So nothing really outside of the ordinary. Those are figures that we'll see in certain parts of the U.S. When we look at the politics, they are a democratic nation on good relations with the U.S. and China. And terrorism equals, well, let's see, if we look at the Global Terrorism Index from 2019, we can see the top 50 countries here. They are number 7 on the list, which, isn't fantastic, but it's not to sound insensitive or too frank, but it's almost a way of life in some of the in this country and some of the other countries amongst the top of this list, because they do deal with such different issues than we see here in the States. When these issues occur, it's cleaned up almost in a similar fashion that we would see a normal day-to-day criminal activity cleaned up by the police, with efforts to have it cleaned up and running back to normal within 2 to 4 hours. So although that is horrible to think about, that is a way of life and shouldn't affect anything from a business standpoint. So to summarize what we spoke about today, we had a quick introduction. We looked at the value of the data. We examined the data patterns, such as relevant features and variables, drew spatial correlations. We examined if network analysis can be used, looked at some emerging trends and risk reduction, trend analysis, the future of the data, international expansion, and of course the summary. Again, my name is Matthew Eckelberg. Thank you so much for listening to my video presentation. I hope you've enjoyed these presentations over the last 4 weeks. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.